You're now watching two old farts making noises. Welcome to Canadian Art Today with your host, Paul Constable.
And we did it.
We did it.
I'm always impressed when David's not around that I can punch the right buttons. So I'm very excited.
Good thing he's
So,
not unionized here. We'd be in
oh
trouble.
my God, we couldn't do the show. So, but the cool thing is today though, and I'm very excited because we've talked about this guest for a while.
We have.
I'm very excited to hear and see what this guest is going to be bringing, I guess, over a few shows. So it's very exciting. So, and people are loving and finding Canadian art today, which we are very happy about. So people that are watching, subscribe, like, and comment below. But I'm very excited that people are finding the show finally. LinkedIn apparently doesn't like me anymore because it blocks me now. I can only post one. They won't let me post like to the 4 groups I used to post to. So apparently LinkedIn doesn't love me anymore. But
Yeah.
our fans love us here on YouTube, and that's the important thing.
All business, those guys. They want
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, our guest today on Canadian Art Today is really, she's not an artist, but boy, is she needed by artists a lot, used by artists a lot, and her expertise goes back quite a few years. And she's from Guelph, Ontario, and she is a artist coach and an art coach and a mentor. And I find that artists a lot of times are afraid to ask for help when really they do need help doing what they do. And Joanne Pollock is going to be our guest today, and she has mentoring even art galleries, art patrons, people that buy art, collectors, what to buy, who to buy, how for an artist, how to get into an art gallery. We'll talk about pricing. We're going to talk about a lot of things. I see Joanne is sort of the Dr. Ruth. If anybody remembers Dr. Ruth, she's the Dr. Ruth for artists. And I'd like to welcome Joanne Pollock to our show.
And there you are.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Paul. Welcome.
Try and get my background figured out here. There we go.
Don't pay attention to the man behind the screen. That's all I can tell you. So, well, Joanne, welcome to the show, and have a wonderful interview. And we'll see you when you're done.
Sounds awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I get my volume up, make sure that people can hear what we're saying. Yeah, this is, we've had a couple of programs where we've had you on Artists in Canada, and now we have this great opportunity to, expand our knowledge a little bit, and expand artists and things. And we normally have artists on, but I thought now we're about, we're a number of shows in, and I said, it's time. And I know people have been asking me, is anything about Joanne again? And I'm going, yes, we'll have. Oh, you're popular.
How about that?
Yeah, and everybody likes to know the kinds of things that you do. And can you give us a bit of background on what does an art coach do? Like, why do we need an art coach?
So thank you, Paul, first of all. And it's a real pleasure to work with you again. You and I have such a special connection because we never run about all things art to talk about. But in fact, I am an art consultant, and there is no job description for what an art consultant does. So I like to categorize myself as an artpreneur. And really my role is that I staunchly advocate for artists to reach their full potential. And so I started my business in 2010. It's certainly taken on a number of reinventions. Like most businesses in the arts, there isn't a straight line through this business. But I started in 2010 primarily selling art to private clients. And that's hard work, as everybody knows. And so I shifted my business. There is a definite delineation in my business between pre-COVID and post-COVID. COVID changed so many lives in the art world so dramatically. And for all of us, we had to either shift, pivot, change, or we didn't survive. So I would say that prior to the pandemic, my focus was primarily on selling to private clients, with a little bit of coaching and mentoring. But when we were all stuck at home, then it was necessary. I couldn't go into clients' homes to sell. So I found myself becoming an art coach and mentor to many artists across the country from coast to coast. And it proved to be very successful, actually. I've had my best years financially through those COVID times.
Yeah.
So there isn't a job description, as I said, for what I do. There are so many facets to my business, but I think primarily what I enjoy greatly is to coach artists on a number of topics. Usually it is what I call a learner-centered, which means that I let the artist talk to me about where their sticking points are, where they're stuck. And very oftentimes artists are beautiful creators, but they are not good marketers for whatever reason with their work. So
Yeah, I think COVID has kind of forced them as well to do another job on their list that they normally didn't do a lot of. They're being forced to make reels and videos and talk about their work more confidently, which I think artists need to do. They need to be more confident about what they do. And I think COVID's probably forced them to do that. And, speaking engagements and talking about their work, showing their work more. I think social media has probably helped them. It gobbles up a lot of their other time, but as we know, the marketing aspects of, 80-20 rule, right? You've got to, you got to do a certain amount of work before you can sell it, but then you have to have that exposure. You need to get it in the eyeballs of the people that are going to react the way you want them to react. Some don't want to sell their work, but they want, say, a show at a gallery. They want to be, they want that kind of expertise. But I imagine that's the kind of thing that you help them with as well, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I coach artists at all levels. So I coach artists that are emerging or not even emerging. Perhaps some of them are just getting started. And then I move into mid-career artists and then into established artists who actually have very similar problems to emerging artists or mid-career. So the problems are not different. There is some consistency to things that they get stuck on. So I would say that probably a couple of key points that I help artists with is I critique their work. Very often they feel, is my work good enough? I'm comparing myself to other artists on social media. I'm just getting started. Is this good enough? Can I go forward? So there is an element of critiquing their work, but there's also things like helping them to find gallery representation, which of course is a huge issue with many artists these days. But I also talk about, as you mentioned, how to price their work, how to really promote themselves in terms of their social media. That is a big problem for everybody's frustrated with social media, and you're right, Paul. It seems to be an endless game, but nonetheless, this is the world that we're living in. And for artists that can't find gallery representation, or perhaps they live in a smaller community and it just isn't available, social media does become the main way to connect with the greater public. But not only do I do coaching and mentoring, I also do art talks. I was fortunate to be a part of your organization where I was able to give a series of 4 talks, which I guess by all accounts were very well received. But I also give workshops on writing, say, an artist statement, or helping artists sort out what is appropriate in terms of a bio, a CV, a resume, what's necessary on their website in order for them to go forward and do gain gallery representation. So I tend to talk to very interesting arts groups all over the country. I have had some wonderful opportunities to teach workshops as well. I'm also, go ahead.
I'm going to get Stephen to start our first image up here and get that started so we can show some visuals along with our conversation. There we go. So there's you on that fancy Vespa. I love that. That's a great shot. It's a great shot. And you're on the phone as usual, right? You just
Thanks. It was fun. I do have the opportunity to go to a warmer climate in the winter. And that happened to be in front of the Vespa shop. Oh my God, they had some great Vespas in there. They had some Christian Dior Vespas. It was pretty amazing. But you know, in any kind of self-promotion, you have to make sure that you're engaging and that you're going to catch people's attention. And this one in particular was fun. And it does show that I am on the move. I am. And so I that was fun. The store owner was very engaging, and in fact he was a professional photographer. I lucked out with that image.
Yeah,
so
I've seen European shots of this, of people on Vespas carrying paintings. It's, you know, in other words, they don't buy a big fancy car, but you know what? I got a Vespa, but I bought a good piece of art. And they went, and you know, the two can go together. You spent your money on art rather than on, say, on a vehicle. So they didn't show up in their Ferrari and buy a little knickknack of a piece of art. They spent their money on art, and they went home on their Vespa. And this was in a big oversized canvas. And I think there was a girl sitting on the back holding the canvas, and the guy was driving. It's kind of a goofy shot, but it was kind of fun. It kind of got the message across to a lot of people as to what you can do. It was kind of a fun thing.
Well, that's what it's all about, really. And so, you know, here I am teaching courses online. That shot was a series of I think 6. I collaborated actually with another art consultant in Toronto, and she and I did a program. It was called Take 6. It was a lot of work, but we had international clients actually on that workshop. It was very engaging to hear artists from other countries talk about their experiences. So that was something that I did during COVID. The other image is me giving a talk. I juried a show in Alton at the Alton Mill in Ontario, and I worked with another an artist, and he and I had great joy in jurying this show. It was wonderful. And then of course afterwards you have to defend your decisions about what you made as a juror. So so that was really fun. And I love to jury. I'm called upon to jury shows regularly. And at the beginning, this was a new experience for me. My background actually is that I'm an art historian. I'm not an artist, but I have certainly at this point since 2010 gotten to interpret and critique artwork very well. But at that point, it's always interesting to work with other jurors, because you do have to be able to defend your decisions about what you're going to put in the show. And as a juror, I always make myself available for an artist to come back if perhaps they weren't accepted. I think it's key to have artists understand how a juror thinks and why perhaps it wasn't entered into the show, and to learn how to deal with rejection effectively so that you can keep going forward, right?
So do you find that international artists from outside our country having the same problems as we have here?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can help them as well, like say in the States or in Europe, whatever. So I always hear people saying, "Oh, the sales are better in that other city. We're not a very good art town." And and you go to their town and you say, "Your city is better than our city. Our city is not a very good art town." It's always better from away for some reason. And why is that?
Well, I think it's just greener hills look better, which is certainly not the case.
No.
And I think the difference between, say, being outside of Canada as an artist, say in the US, for example, and there's a lot of Canadian artists that want to get into the US market, and understandably so, because it is a much larger playing field. So, in Canada, our population is 30 some million. And, when you filter down the actual number of people that buy art in Canada, it becomes quite small. Versus, say, in the US, where there's a larger population and people do tend to support the arts in a much different way. That's been my experience with the difference between Canadian artists and American artists, for example.
Yeah. I find that, well, you get a population base of 10 times what we have, or plus, maybe 11 times. But and I think, you'd be generalizing, I guess, if you said that one demographic over our demographic in Canada spend a percentage of their income on art and appreciate art. But I think in the States, I think there is a feeling that people do spend well on art. They love art. That's not that Canadians don't like art, but I think it's, and I guess I'm assuming a lot of this thing, we have also a kind of a deflated dollar as well, right? We're dealing a huge 30% factor a little bit in. So it's a great advantage to buy Canadian art if you're from the States, just for dollars alone.
Well, I think there is a definite distinction between the heartbeat of a Canadian artist versus the heartbeat, I'm generalizing, but an American artist. And I would say, in a broad sort of sweeping statement, that Canadian artists primarily tend to be fairly conservative in their approach. We tend to see Canadian landscape being very predominant in what people buy. I would say florals are the next category that people gravitate to, and abstraction is a much different appreciation for a lot of people to collect. So I think we tend to border on what we know and feel safe with in terms of art. When you get into the auction market and you look at some of the top sales in Canada, and if we sell a painting for $3 million at auction, for example, we are astounded at what that price has fetched versus if you follow some of the US markets like Sothebys and Christie's and other large auction houses where they're auctioning off artwork. There was a Van Gogh that was auctioned off recently in New York, and I think it went for $39 million. So there's a stark difference between what we see it going on in the higher end Canadian market versus the US market.
Right. Yeah. Well, we can talk about markets because we're going to have you on for a number of shows here. So we're going to break this into pieces. This is kind of a general show today, and we'll just talk about a little bit about the kinds of things you do, which is really interesting because you help a lot of people personally, one-on-one, groups, associations. You help install work on private collectors' homes. Can you explain these couple of shots we've got? I found some of these shots on your Instagram, and I thought we'd just use some of them. And is this in-home art events? I guess you used to do a lot of them, or used to sell art through homes. I guess that was the artist would have an event. Is that what that was about?
So this image is that I was invited into a very prominent Ontario painter. She's an elderly woman that she came from New York, and she's a very abstracted artist. And she invited me to come down for a weekend and sell her work to the general public. She was part of a studio tour. So this was an opportunity to sell her work for a weekend. And in fact, I think I sold $40,000 or $50,000 worth of art for her that weekend. Her work is not inexpensive, but but her home, she first of all is very grand. Her work is in corporate collections in Canada. And so it was an opportunity for me to meet people and to sell to them perhaps a higher end price point of art. And selling art is just all about confidence and really being able to articulate what you think the buyer might like. There is a lot of psychology, and perhaps we're going to talk about this in another session, Paul.
Yeah.
But there is an art to selling, and so this was a fabulous weekend with a fabulous artist, and it was great.
So the other one is you help do installations as well, help install works either on galleries and homes as well. Is that
So
part of your service?
this image is of a corporate client that I had. I was invited into the College of Veterinarians in Ontario to do place art in their office. And so I think I placed maybe 20 pieces of art in their offices. And it was wonderful. When you talk about having to cater and accommodate to a client's needs, in this case, they started out by telling me they only wanted images of animal art throughout the office complex. The complex was quite huge. They had a number of boardrooms. And so I started out and respected their wishes. But when we got into situations like other boardrooms and other areas of the office, I wanted to move them a little bit beyond perhaps what their focus was on. So this was an artist from Collingwood, and I placed this artwork into their boardroom. And in fact, I went on. It was a 3-year project where they wanted to amortize the artwork over a 3-year period. So I charged them a monthly rental. And basically it became a rent to own, and they eventually did end up purchasing all of the artwork.
Yeah, no, that's sometimes they need a third party to have a vision and eyes for them. They have, like you said, they just wanted animals, but you're realizing that at a certain point, those animals live in the landscape, they live in woods and streams and things, and you realize that if you don't have a little bit of breathing space between those other pieces of work, you lose the impact of the initial intention.
And they were great because they did kind of listen to my suggestions. They were open to my suggestions, and I think the job just got better as time went on because they became more confident in what I was trying to do and what I was trying to sell to them. So
Yeah.
it became a wonderful job to do. And I enjoy working with corporate clients. In this case, it was a provincially funded organization, so there technically wasn't a budget that I had to stick to. So it was great fun. I was able to place higher end pieces of art for them, and they were very happy with it.
Yeah, no, and they tend to last longer when they have images of value. Like they will incur in value as well. You don't want to talk about that. You buy the work that you love, but if you buy quality, it'll be there for a long time for you, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. So were you able to place a number of different artists as well in this one?
Oh yes, it was a hunt. I mean, part of my role as an art consultant is to go out and, I knew a couple of animal painters in the province, and I presented them with various things, and they were actually, the woman that I worked with, she was the director of the organization. She was great to work with because she was very forthright in telling me yes or no. So it was great that she was easy to work with, but I did have to search the province to find what I thought was suitable animal images. And I ended up doing, big pigs in one of their boardroom. I had a heritage turkey. I had horses, of course, which were easy. But I do have to search at that point when I was doing that facet of my business. And I've got another one right now. I've got a new corporate client in Guelph, huge. The office is huge. And I've been called in to place art into their facility. And
Yeah.
so, you know, in this case, they've named all of their boardrooms after national parks. And so they've had me on the hunt now to go into finding professional images of the national parks that are in their complex. So
So I use that right there. There's a call for artists. I encourage everybody to follow Joanne on her Instagram, and because make her job easier for her. That's what I'd say. Right? You can. Well, it's about being found, right? And so, do you choose artwork just from Ontario artists?
I do not. In this case, for this particular call, I will be going across Canada. I've put a call out through the professional photographers of Canada in their newsletter. And so I will be soliciting images from artists across the country.
Well,
and likewise, sorry, Paul.
Send me a link to your call and we'll get that on Artists in Canada, because I already know a number of photographers in Western Canada that have shot provincial parks and national parks. So
well, there you go.
There you go. So we can help you. We can help you help them. So
it's good to collaborate.
Yeah. So here's another piece of your life. Is it more recent? This part, last 5-6 years you've been doing this, or?
So this was an opportunity for me to learn something new. Very often I would get calls with people that had inherited an art collection, or they had artwork that they wanted to insure for insurance purposes. So very often I would get calls, and I used to say no, that I didn't do that portion of my business because I didn't have any expertise in the appraisal industry. But I was very fortunate. The chap that you see below in the image, he is a professional appraiser in Hamilton, and our paths crossed, and we began to work together when I did get calls of this nature to go in and either appraise art for, as I said, for insurance purposes, or perhaps take the artwork to auction if it is of value. So we work with an auction house in Toronto, whereby we can feed the auction house things that have value. And I don't know whether for people that want to look on my Instagram account, I would say within the last 2 weeks, I was called to a collector's home outside of Guelph. Had no idea, but I never say no to a job because I don't know what the collector is going to have. And walked into an absolutely treasure trove. It was kind of like Aladdin's cave. This collector knew every where he bought every piece, how much he paid for it. He had done extensive research, and he didn't necessarily want to sell his collection, not yet. He's only in his late 50s, but what he wanted to do was have it insured, because the insurance company said that if there was a fire or something happened to the home, it would be a flat out an insurance buyout. And in fact, the collector has work that is worth a substantial amount of money. So I was fortunate to meet Bert Dortmans in my travels. Bert and I now continue to do these jobs on a regular basis. It's fun because you never know what you're going to walk into when you're called into a job.
So you feel a little bit like that Truth or Fortune show that's on TV, or whatever it's Fake or Fortune?
Fake or Fortune.
Yeah, you are the Canadian version of Fake or Fortune. There you go.
Well, it's pretty cool, and we have unearthed some truly amazing treasures, which you know, and artwork. Usually, you know, I've been called into jobs where artwork is stashed under beds and in closets and in barns and not stored very effectively. However, you know, once you lay eyes on a piece that you know has value, you get pretty excited.
Yeah, no, and seeing, like you said, those treasure troves that people have, and the collections that grandma has left mother and now has left you. Like it's gone through maybe 3 generations that have never been found, blow the dust off them. Everybody loves to find stuff in the attic. You know, it's always that, yeah, that new one that was just the new old painting that was just found by so-and-so, a group of 7 or whatever, right? It would have been kind of a fun thing. Yeah.
Well, you know that young people don't necessarily gravitate to grandma's art collection. And this is what's happening, is that the market is flooded now with people trying to divest their collections. So
I popped this slide up, and people have probably been digesting that 5 artist archetypes.
Archetypes. Well, I would say that I probably have uncovered a wide variety of artistic personalities since 2010. So I'll break it down for you, Paul, and I'll just very quickly encapsulate what I think the 5 archetypal types are of artists. And for those artists that are listening on the call, they probably will be able to identify with 1 or 2. But invariably, this is what I've uncovered in my experience. So the first type of artist that I encounter are what I call people pleasers. And these artists are often very frustrated because they're trying to think what a buyer would like. And this becomes a real mugs game, because if you're trying to paint for the market, it's an impossible task. You don't know what a buyer will like. So I think it's that personality type where you're trying to very hard to figure out what people want, and I don't encourage that at all. I think that artists need to find their own stride, but just let me go into the second category, and I call them disciples. And these really are artists that become devotees to one particular artist. And so their focus narrows considerably. And these artists try very hard to emulate this artist style because they know that they've been successful. And this is so easy to do now because, of course, social media is flooded with images. And so really what these people are doing is they're copyists. They may tweak a little bit, but in fact, they're not using their own steam to come up with their own creations. And this, of course, is a problem. Their focus is way too narrow. The third type that I've encountered are perpetual students. And these are the artists that take course after course, trying to find that right fit for them. And this too is very limiting because they're unable to really, they're not taking what they've absorbed in a class and taking it and now putting it into their own tool bag. They tend to not have the confidence to do that, and so they keep taking courses all the time. The other type of artists I've encountered, I call them producers, and they think that the more they produce, the better it is. And in fact, this is not true. I would encourage an artist to pull it back. Productivity does not equate to excellence. So I would encourage an artist to pull it back and to produce maybe, quality work and focus on getting better at the quality work versus just cranking it out there. And because they seem to be in a panic with getting their work out there. So they overproduce, and often the work becomes quite inferior. The self-critic is another type of artist. These are very common. I think every artist is their own worst enemy. They tend to feel that they're not, that their work isn't good enough, that it's never finished. Who would buy it? Gosh, can I actually sell this piece of art for a substantial amount of money? It becomes quite self-sabotaging, that type of behavior. But it is very common for artists to do that. And the last type of artist, they're what I would categorize as hobby artists. And we've certainly seen a lot of this type of artist come forward during the pandemic. And now they are infiltrating our world, and in some ways changing the caliber of art that is being produced by professional artists. So hobby artists are very happy just to paint to make other people happy. They enjoy the social aspect of hanging around with other artists, and that's what they enjoy. They enjoy the social interaction. But the key to all of this, I think, Paul, with these different types of artists, is that they lack the confidence to really strike out on their own. So I think that really is the key. They haven't found their own uniqueness, and they're not able to show up at their canvas independently and produce an independent body of work with their own thoughts.
So with your mentorship though, and helping, can you draw that out of, say, a hobby artist? They're starting out, they have potential, they look like they're somewhat of a copyist a little bit too. They're proficient, they know how to hold a brush, for instance. They might be somewhat effective in how they use their pigments, but maybe they need subject matter adjustments, or they need maybe suggestion to take an actual university class or a professional workshop somewhere. But then, can you work with an artist like that to move them up a notch or two into something more seriously? Or is it, like you said, there's a large amount of these artists on the market, and I think they're searching for that calm, or they're something inward that they just have to do something with their hands. Maybe they have some small skill set. Can those artists move ahead in what they're doing, or are they always a hobby artist?
Well, no, as you know, people can develop their skills over time, as long as they're committed. If they're committed to their artwork, then of course, a session with me or several sessions with me are always helpful, particularly for these kinds of artists who lack confidence in themselves. And of course they do, because what I hear is, when I start my discussion and I might say, are you self-taught, or do you have an arts background? And those artists that say to me sheepishly, no, I'm self-taught, and I'll say, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being self-taught. I know plenty of artists that are successful that are self-taught. So I don't think it's a matter of artists being unable to go forward with some measure of success. I think it's that if they really are able to commit to learning and to growing, and I focus a lot on networking with how perhaps a hobby artist should be networking with other artists, or joining an arts organization, so that they can get to know what's going on in the art world and to get better. And there are many vehicles in Canada that allow for that to happen. So no, I think that there, I mean, when you work with an artist that is just not having the foresight or the ability to produce something that is saleable, I think that's difficult. And I certainly, anybody that puts a paintbrush in their hand, I certainly don't want to discourage them, because perhaps they're painting for other reasons, mental health issues or whatever. So I wouldn't discourage anyone, but I do think there has to be that impetus for artists to want to listen to a professional, whether it's an art teacher or an art consultant or whoever it happens to be, so that they are open to learning new things.
Yeah, so a lot of artists, they have friends in their same group, but they might show their painting to them. But really, if they're serious about it, a lot of their friends are not the ones to be the advisors for them. So especially, it can also divide friends a little bit when that happens. Oh, she's moving on, and I'm still where I am, and those things. But a lot of times, it doesn't cost a lot of money as far as that goes. But the other thing is, go to good museums, go to good art galleries, see what's there, talk to the people there about it as well, draw information from them. Then I would suggest that is initially a good start, as well as talking with you about things like that. But these can happen with professional artists as well. I mean, they get into ruts where maybe they know that a certain treescape with a sunset, it's a good seller, right? So they constantly paint almost the same image over and over and over again because they know it's a good cookie to sell, and they got to pay for their booth space, or their gallery is wanting, I want more of those ones, I can sell them. So you get caught into a rut after a while. You get known for painting the sunset, and understanding that sometimes you need to talk to somebody about how, like you did with your collectors, how do you move the gallery a little bit to accept something more than the piece that they just want more of, that same one right after the other. So I guess that's part of making a living.
Well, I love working with artists, and I have been devoted to working with artists for a long time. So I do understand the artistic sentiment very, very much so. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I do advocate for artists a lot, and I'm happy to do that. The flip side of that is that occasionally I will get an artist that has not painted very much, and the first or second discussion points that we talk about is that they want me to find a New York gallery for them. And so
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, but that is the flip side of that argument, where the artist has too much confidence and is not recognizing that art, being an artist is a journey. It's not just a one-shot wonder. And for some of these artists that think they're going to be discovered, it's unlikely that that's going to happen. So anyway,
let's just kind of move on a little bit here. We understand those things. Excuse me. I guess I've written it pretty much there on the screen. It's the art gallery advice and mentoring. So you help art galleries, commercial galleries as well, get established a little bit, find artists for their gallery as well. If they're looking for a certain style of art that they want to sell, say they're a mountain gallery, why would they have other things other than, say, the name? They sell mountain paintings, but landscapes, I guess, florals, whatever they're going to do, a good mix sometimes that, work together well. So do you work with a number of galleries in Ontario?
So I know plenty of art gallery owners in Ontario, and over time I've built up some great respect and relationships with artists, with gallery owners. So I don't want to abuse that privilege. I want to show gallery owners artwork that is competent and that I feel would be a good fit for their gallery. So do we have time, Paul, to talk about the different types of artists, or shall we just concentrate on?
We've got to talk about some galleries yet a little bit. We don't have an awful lot of time. We're getting a little short. We got a few minutes left, but I think we want to save some of this a little bit for we're going to have a number of shows coming up, and we'll kind of just giving the highlights of some of the things that you do. We get into the type, maybe highlight us a little, the types of galleries that are out there for people. So we'll just tell people that not everything is meant for them. They gotta
absolutely.
So I've mentioned on this one commercial, cooperatives, of course, vanity galleries. And I think we have one more slide or so here of another galleries as well. So can you make a few comments a little bit, I guess, understanding that there is different ways of showing your work professionally. Some, like a cooperative, you may have to work the floor. But in a commercial gallery, they typically take care of things for you. We do have had issues with, I guess, the so-called vanity galleries. Can you tell people a little bit about a vanity gallery? People know what commercial galleries are and maybe what a cooperative gallery is, where the artists own the gallery a little bit and work it, or a number of people work that. What's a vanity gallery?
Well, I think what is important is that people understand that they need to do their research in trying to find the right gallery for them. and that it is a mutual relationship in building bridges with an art gallery. And maybe we can talk about this in another session,
Yeah,
Paul,
we
because
will.
I think it's really good information. But yes, you've mentioned that there are a number of different gallery types. There's a hybrid gallery, which is now very popular. Most gallery owners that are bricks and mortars are also having virtual galleries associated with their operation. There are nonprofit, of course, which are educational institutions to educate people on a broader level. The cooperatives, I think, are fantastic. I'm a big advocate of artist cooperatives and collectives. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to get into a gallery setting and to sell not only your own work, but to sell other artists' work so that you understand the mechanics of selling. So I think that they're a wonderful opportunity for artists to get started that way. I used to not be a fan of vanity galleries just because I had heard way too many stories of artists being taken to the cleaners financially. So a vanity gallery is one where they will ask the artist to pay to be in their gallery. And this comes in various stripes. They might rent the artist a wall in their gallery. They may offer to have a solo show for an artist, but the artist is really footing the bill for all of that. And I think that there are many unscrupulous art galleries around. So I'm not saying no to a vanity gallery. What I am saying is that artists make sure they understand the financial implications for them. And if they're asked to sign a contract, that artists will read carefully the contract so that they know exactly what they're getting into. So I'm not saying no to vanity galleries. I do think they are a vehicle and an opportunity as long as the artist understands what they're getting themselves into. And vanity galleries solicit actively. So if you have been solicited by a gallery in New York or in Spain or Madrid or London or whatever, you need to understand that these types of galleries have a massive marketing machine where you're not special and your artwork is not necessarily the perfect venue for their gallery. They solicit widely in order to get their business going. So beware of vanity galleries, but if your eyes are wide open and you feel that this is an opportunity for you, then I would say go for it.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a whole program in just galleries alone. So I think I popped this one up on art auctions. There's different types of auctions available. Like a lot of artists say, oh, my work has been auctioned, and it's trying to set a price level for their work based on auction price. And that might be so in certain types of auction houses that are, the big public ones, like Christie's and such. Heffel as well with, I just threw these things up just to say there's a number of different types of auctions. Some are more regional and like the fundraiser ones and the online ones and some of those things. But again, I'd like to leave that for another show. And I think I get your interpretation of where an artist should be seeking. Like usually established artists will go into the public sector and have it, and it may be auctioned in a second generation of sales. It may happen in the state, for instance, that is trying to sell work. So we would have a quick do you have a quick comment on auctions, like really quick, and then we need to break.
I do have a quick comment, and I think what happens is that artists become fatigued with constantly being asked to contribute to fundraisers and art auctions. And I think that there is a lot of merit to that. Artists are extremely generous. And they feel that it's a way to get their artwork out into the public. What I would say about all of that is that, again, if an auction is going to provide you with a small kickback in terms of sales, that might feel better rather than just an outright donation. And I do think that the artist should have a say in the reserve price. I think that if you just hand an auction or a charity your piece of art and say, here you go, and they auction it off for $75, I don't think that feels good for the artist. And I don't like that the artist is not being recognized and supported in the proper way. So that's my feeling on participating.
I agree.
In
Yeah.
charitable donations.
Charitable. Artists have been contacted from day one about everything from Save a Cat and dog organization, which you might love to do. And some do. They're very generous about them. But I think there's a whole show just in that. Anyway, boy, Joanne, we jammed a lot of stuff in 50 minutes here. As usual, we got more to talk about than we have time. And I'm going to bring Stephen back in here, and we're gonna sum up.
We're gonna say thank you, and it was fascinating. I can't wait for like part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And for all the fans that are watching this, they can watch after the paint dries, and we're gonna have like a kind of off the record discussion that we're gonna record. So I don't know how off the record it is. So if you like Canadian Art Today, please subscribe and like. Paul, Joanne, always a pleasure. Paul, I'll see you next week, as they say. Joanne, and we'll see you in a couple seconds.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.